Good afternoon. I'm Eric Schwartz, President of Refugees International, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our 19th annual New York Circle, honoring champions of advocacy in the Americas. We are deeply grateful for our generous sponsors and friends, members of our board of directors, board emeritus, and advisory council, who so strongly support our work, and for all of you who have joined us today. Our program today truly reflects the heart and the soul of our work. For more than 4 decades, Refugees International has worked tirelessly on behalf of the well-being, the rights of refugees and displaced people around the world. People forced to flee war and conflict, persecution, human rights abuses, and disasters resulting from natural hazards made worse by climate change. In fact, as a globally oriented refugee and humanitarian organization that is exclusively focused on reporting and advocacy on behalf of forcibly displaced people, our distinctive work has never been more important. RI's mission is to publicly report on conditions confronting refugees and internally displaced people, to promote action by advocating for policy changes in the provision of life-saving assistance and protection of human rights, and to promote solutions to displacement crises by holding national governments, UN agencies, and humanitarian aid providers accountable to affected populations. We are a nonpartisan organization and do not accept funds from governments or international organizations. This helps to ensure both the independence and the credibility of our work, which is guided solely by humanitarian principles. But it also underscores the critical importance of support, a support from people like you and support from the philanthropic community. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our awardees and program participants today: Denis Castillo Fuentes, Eunice Rendon, and Juan Carlos Viloria Doria. In short, we're just thrilled to honor advocates for refugees and other fleers of necessity from North America, from Central America, and from South America. I also want to thank in advance our host, RI's own Rachel Schmidtke. Rachel is Refugees International's advocate for Latin America. Prior to joining RI, she was the program associate at the Mexico Institute of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, where she produced policy work on Mexico, Central America, US migration and asylum and refugee policies. She's worked at the UN World Food Program in Lima, Peru, and at USAID in El Salvador. So please join me in welcoming Rachel Schmidtke. Rachel?
Thank you, Eric. And good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today. It's an honor to recognize the extraordinary contributions our awardees are making to communities in need across the Americas. Their leadership is a testament to their global commitment to protecting the rights of the forcibly displaced. One such leader we honor today is Denis Castillo Fuentes. Denis is a Honduran national and refugee living in Costa Rica. He is the founder and executive director of the Institute for LGBTQI Migration and Refuge for Central America, known as IRCA Casa Abierta. His nonprofit organization generates actions, advocacy, investigation, training, integrated psychosocial assistance and development opportunities for LGBTQI populations that have been forcibly displaced and are seeking refuge in Central America. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this year's Richard C. Holbrooke Award recipient, Denis Castillo Fuentes.
Quisiera iniciar estas palabras con un agradecimiento expreso a los organizadores de este premio, a Refugee International, líder en abordar el tema del desplazamiento forzado con una innegable repercusión social en el mundo. Me siento muy honrado y recibo con mucha ilusión este reconocimiento por su significado y porque me alienta a seguir trabajando por un mundo más esperanzador. Este acontecimiento me permite agradecer públicamente el esfuerzo y el apoyo de todas las personas de nuestra organización, el Instituto sobre Migración y Refugio LGBTIQ para Centroamérica, IRCA Casa Abierta, quienes han hecho posible que pueda recibir este galardón. Quiero hacer una mención especial de agradecimiento a mi familia, a la población de interés LGTBIQ y cooperantes que han confiado en nuestro trabajo y financiado nuestros proyectos. Los desafíos que enfrentamos las personas refugiadas LGTBIQ son muchos, como son las dificultades para acceder a los servicios de salud, la estigmatización, discriminación, discursos de odio y ataques, la falta de oportunidades laborales y medios de vida, la vulnerabilidad y la explotación, situaciones que atentan contra la dignidad humana. Mi camino en Costa Rica, con cada paso que he dado, está construido con decisión, gratitud y esfuerzo, aspectos que me han permitido ser una voz que guía el camino de otras y otros. Sin duda, los sueños dan fruto. A lo largo de estos años, IRCA Casa Abierta ha sido ese espacio de esperanza, de abrir oportunidades para cientos de personas LGTBIQ que han dejado sus hogares, sus países, porque su vida peligra. IRCA Casa Abierta nos ha permitido contribuir con alimentos, con apoyo psicológico, con albergues, con trámites migratorios, con capacitación y formación en derechos básicos de la ciudadanía, pero sobre todo con cariño y respeto a que más personas LGTBIQ reconstruyan su vida en Costa Rica. Sin más, quiero dedicar este premio a todas las personas que han formado parte de mi vida, a las poblaciones de interés LGTBIQ que hemos acompañado. Ellas son hoy verdaderamente nuestros protagonistas.
Thank you, Denis, for your leadership in helping LGBTQI people rebuild their lives in Costa Rica and for the critical services and support provided by IRCA Casa Abierta. Your courage, strength, and vision continue to positively impact the lives of so many, and Refugees International is honored to partner with you. Next, it's my great pleasure to recognize our first Exceptional Service Award recipient, Juan Carlos Viloria Doria, on behalf of the Coalición por Venezuela. Juan Carlos Viloria Doria is a prominent leader and activist of Venezuelan and Colombian civil society in the diaspora. In June 2019, he assumed the general coordination of the Coalición por Venezuela, which brings together more than 80 civil society organizations in more than 20 countries around the world. Winner of the 2019 National Young Talent Award, its management highlights the articulation and coordination of support between the public sector, international cooperation entities, the private sector, academia, and civil society. So please welcome Juan Carlos Viloria Doria.
It's a big honor to receive this recognition for Refugee International, the Exceptional Service Award, to the outstanding effort from our Coalition for Venezuela. I'm very proud to receive this Exceptional Service Award on behalf of our Coalition for Venezuela. We are in more than 20 countries thanks to the effort of our more than 80 organizations from the North America, Central America, and Caribbean, but also South America. And now we are present in Europe. Coalition for Venezuela is being part of the response. We want to contribute to the host countries to demonstrate that we are doing the best for contribute to the growth and development of the host community. Refugee International is doing a great job to visibilize all the effort from our migrants and refugees. And the contribution from our people is very important to show how can we make all this world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Carlos, for inspiring us with your leadership and for realizing the vision of the Coalición por Venezuela's global impact. Now, I'm truly honored and excited to introduce our next special guest this afternoon, Jorge Ramos, who joins us today in an interview with our Exceptional Service Award recipient, Eunice Rendon. As many of you know, Jorge Gilberto Ramos Avalos is an award-winning Mexican-American journalist, author, and host of Univision News. He is regarded as the best-known Spanish-language news anchor in the United States of America. Eunice is the executive director of Agenda Migrante, an expert in migration and violence prevention. Previously, Ms. Rendon served as the Deputy Executive Secretary of Mexico's Executive Secretariat of the National Public Security System. She has been director of the Institute for Mexicans Abroad at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, She worked for the Ministry of the Interior as the Vice Minister of Violence Prevention and at the Ministry of Health as the Director for International Affairs. She has also been a consultant in different international organizations belonging to the United Nations system and a fellow at the National Institute of Health in the United States. Please join me in welcoming Jorge Ramos and Eunice Rendon.
Rachel and Eunice, both of you, thank you so much for being here. It is an honor to be part of this conversation because it is important. It's not only words, but how we can affect the lives of so many people. So, Rachel, let me just begin with something really basic. For those who do not know what Refugees International is, what do you do? And what's the difference between your organization and others?
Sure. It's so wonderful to participate in this interview. What makes Refugees International, I think, different and special is that we are the only globally oriented refugee and humanitarian organization that's exclusively focused on reporting and advocacy on behalf of forcibly displaced people. So basically what we do is we ensure that forcibly displaced persons are supported so they can live with dignity, so they're empowered, they have access to opportunities, and really so they can participate in decisions that fundamentally affect their day-to-day lives. And I think our advocacy is really informed by the perspectives of displaced people. We always try to incorporate, their testimonies and their voices in everything that we do. And the difference between us and maybe other organizations is that we don't accept any funding from governments or the United Nations. And that decision is really based so that we can report and advocate in a way that's impartial on issues that, maybe politicians or other non-governmental organizations could be reluctant or hesitant to address publicly. This gives us more flexibility and independence. And we also don't provide direct services to people. Our function really is advocacy.
So give me an idea. I understand that before the pandemic, there were about 27 missions throughout the world. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have a team of advocates, and what we do is we typically go to different countries in the regions that we cover. And what we're doing is trying to take a snapshot of what's going on in that particular situation at a given time. And so in my work, for example, I would go to countries in Latin America to interview displaced people, to speak with governments, to speak with international organizations, NGOs. And what we would do is then come back and report and then advocate based on what we've seen in the countries that we work in to Congress, to regional governments, really anyone who we think is a leader or is making important decisions regarding displaced people.
Now, for those who are listening, help me make the differentiation between forcibly displaced people, refugees, immigrants, because sometimes in the conversation, and now as a journalist, we use those terms so easily and people might get confused. Help me with that.
Definitely. And it is can be confusing sometimes, all the different definitions. But basically, when we talk about a refugee, that's a person who has fled their country because they're at risk of a serious harm. So a human rights violation, violence, or persecution. And basically, the harm is so severe that they are forced to leave their country to seek international protection elsewhere, and mostly because their governments can't protect them, so they have to leave. An immigrant or a migrant is different in the sense that I know we use that term pretty broadly and generally to refer to a lot of different people, but generally or typically when we refer to a migrant, it's someone who is leaving their country to seek out opportunities, to be reunited with family, to seek out educational opportunities, for example, and they typically can return back to the country that they have left from without risk to their safety. So it's important, I think, to be careful about labeling, because sometimes we refer to immigrants and migrants more generally, and there may be people that are underneath that sort of umbrella that are seeking out or need international protection, but they might not have had access to an asylum system or a refugee system or something like that. And an asylum seeker is someone who, has left their country because of persecution and is essentially awaiting a decision to be made whether or not they, meet the standard to access refugee status. And that's really a human right. So anyone who enters into a country has that right to seek asylum and should be able to do so.
Onisim, I'll get to you in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to ask Rachel about what we're seeing here in the United States, something specific. And as a journalist, I'm curious. As you know, last November 8th, the US opened its border with Mexico, and also people from 30 different countries can come to the United States. But at the same time, I'm realizing that we still have Title 42 that allows the US government to truly reject people who are seeking asylum in this country. How do you see it? What's the problem? What can we do?
Well, I think the problem, as I sort of mentioned in the asylum seeker definition, is that asylum is a human right and everyone should be able to access that right. And so what Title 42 does is essentially impeding people from accessing a basic human right that they should be able to have. And so I think what's really important is that we as in the United States and as a global community start to push back against this type of policy, because it is damaging to many lives. And now, especially that the United States has opened its borders to international visitors, there really is no justification to have Title 42 in place. And we have an advocate here, a senior advocate for the United States, Yael Shocker. She works very diligently on this issue, but really we need to be pushing the US government and Congress in general to roll back this policy.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. You are allowing people coming by plane, but if they do it by land, right at the border, they're simply being rejected. Okay, so let's talk about Eunice. Rachel, why is she here?
So Eunice is here. We had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago, and she's a wonderful advocate for the rights of migrants at the US-Mexico border. Her work is prolific. I think she's really a leader in this space and does such a wonderful job of bringing in the perspective of migrants to her work. So we're really happy to have her here and to honor her tonight.
Okay, because she's going to be getting an award, correct?
Yes, exactly. Eunice is receiving our Exceptional Service Award on behalf of Refugees International.
Okay, Eunice, so this is going to be kind of weird for you and me. We speak Spanish, and then we're going to have to communicate in English with a lot of accent. So, Eunice, great to meet you via Zoom. And I've been following your work in Agenda Migrante. But those who are not familiar with your job, what do you do?
Thank you very much to everybody. And in Agenda Migrante, we work on behalf of migrants. We are a coalition of organizations, more than 50 organizations working together in the United States and in Mexico, and also in Central America now. And we are working on behalf of human rights, on behalf of migrants and their human rights. And we are working with different kinds of migrants. As you already said, we work with refugees, we work also with asylum seekers, we work with migrants in different parts of the country. And what we do is we do advocacy through media. We also work with a network of lawyers in order to help them in their cases. We also work with a lot of refugees and shelters in both sides of the border, and in Mexican both borders, in the southern one and in the northern part of Mexico. So we have also worked a lot on behalf of dreamers. We have a network also with dreamers that are in the States and also those who came back to Mexico. And we have especially worked with children that are on their migration, children on accompanied minors, and also children that come with their families, with unit families, in order to also defend their rights and in order to underline that they need special care from all the countries and from all of us.
Eunice, let me ask you about two examples. I was recently in Tapachula, and I saw one big caravan of people from Central America, Latin America, and Haiti trying to come to the United States. When you face a caravan like that, what do you do? Agenda Migrante, what do you do?
Especially, Jorge, we have been working the last 2 years with caravans and also with the Title 42 people. So with the people in caravans, what we do, we work with some allies in the southern border. We have a lot of allies in Suchiate, which is the door of Mexico to Central America. And what we do is we try to identify some cases of, for example, unaccompanied minors that can be taken by some of our lawyers in the States in order to ask for an asylum over there. And also what we do through media and through our forum, because we have made a lot of forums all over in the States, in Mexico, in a lot of places with a lot of population. We try two things: to give the voice to migrants in order to hear their necessities and their opportunities from their voices. And also what we have done is we have changed some law and some legislation in order to defend these populations in mobility. For example, at the Education Ministry, we have changed the law in order to recognize their studies and the capabilities they have developed in the States, and to certify them in Mexico, and to make and to validate them through the educational law. And also with the caravans, what we have done is work with the CNDH, which is the National Commission on Human Rights, in order to push them to take some special measures and to make some observations to the governments in which the migrants are passing through. And for example, in this caravana, the Human Rights Commission, which we are working with them, they for the first time they take some special measures for the caravan before it began. So that's the kind of things we have done. And we also, in this caravan, we work with Suchate allies in order to help them in their path through this place. And also we are monitoring them in the different places in which they are, because another important thing to underline is that as long as we have our border with a lot of militaries and Guardia Nacional and all that security forces, migrants also took these different paths, which are more dangerous. And also we are taking care of that. And in the northern part of Mexico, the ones that arrive there, we work because now criminal groups are doing very bad things against migrants. They are victims of extortions, of kidnappings, and also a very difficult thing that we are working with is that criminal groups now are crossing migrants as a new business, and it is more dangerous for migrants because it's not like the pollero we used to have. Is something more dangerous for them. And also, we have seen a lot of violations of women, for example, of migrant women, and also violations of the rights of children that are traveling alone, or even those who are traveling with their families. And we are also working with others, especially in Ciudad Juárez, which I was for the last 2 years place off.
Yep. Unice, I want to bring Rachel to the conversation, but let me ask you something very specific, something on politics. Do you think that Mexico has become the wall of the United States, that the Mexican National Guard and the Army somehow have become the border patrol of the US? I still remember when 2018, when President López Obrador said that he was going to protect immigrants and actually allow them to go from Guatemala all the way to the border. That's not the case anymore. How is the political situation changed with López Obrador as president?
Yes, actually, it changed a lot. When we began this government, we have seen a lot of messages from the president and from the authorities in order to help migrants to have a more humanitarian perspective of migration. But at the end now, everything's changed. That was only for the first month. And then we have a lot of caravans. And I think that the United States pushed Mexico to be part of the world. Not only Mexico, also Central American countries of Guatemala have been pushed to be part of this world. And I think that Mexico is helping or is pushed by the state with different treatments in order to help with this wall in both borders, because in the south border we have a lot of military, we have our Guardia Nacional, a lot of members of it, even if we have a lot of other problems of security which are more important for Mexican agenda. But we have these people taking care of our border because we don't want them to pass to the States. And also in the northern part of our country, we have two policies in which we are supporting the American government, which are the remaining Mexico policy, which was ended and now is going to start again, which was a very violatory policy, but that needs the help of Mexican government. And we are again accepting that very bad policy. And also, as you already said, the Title 42 implemented by the United States government with the Mexican authorities to support. And we have seen a lot of new challenges and a lot of violations of human rights, of migrant human rights and their processes. So I think that Mexico is being part of the world. But if we decided to be part of this world, we have to take care of the human rights. We have to respect also migrants, and we are not doing that. And we don't have even the policies and the resources in order to help all those people that now is staying in Mexico. As you already know, our refugees, our asylum seekers have increased 6,000% in the last year, and we have the same budget in the command, which is the Mexican institution for refugees. So we have a lot of challenges, and what I see is the real commitment comes from the from NGOs, from shelters, from maybe religious people, but not from the government, even if they said that in the statement.
Thank you so much. We have 5 more minutes, and let me ask both of you. Let me start with you, Rachel. With Refugees International, give me the wide view, the world view of what's happening with refugees around the world. What are your main challenges? How do you see it? Do you see more refugees now? And if that's the case, why?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's over 80 million displaced people around the world right now. And it's a very difficult time to be a displaced or a person, a refugee or a migrant. I think some of the big challenges, the COVID-19 pandemic really displayed the sort of inequities of our world. And, the people who are often most vulnerable are refugees and migrants, for example. We see the effects of climate change now being a huge issue where people are forced to leave because they can no longer survive in the places that they originally were living in because of climate change. Another big issue, is safety in transit. And Nisa mentioned this already a little bit, but it can be very dangerous to transit through different countries, particularly if there are armed groups or international criminal organizations or things like that. So safety in transit. And really, we want to see more asylum systems and protection systems built up so that they can respond to these needs. But I think Mexico is a great example of how those systems aren't necessarily designed, nor are they being resourced to intake or process the amount of people that they're receiving. So that's another huge challenge that we're seeing for displaced people everywhere.
Before we let you go, Rachel, tell me a little bit about the coalition that you are forming in Central America.
Yes, of course. So one thing that, as I said, RI is very proud of is that we try to speak with as many displaced people as possible and really partner with refugee-led organizations. And so we've been in talks with about 15 organizations throughout Mexico and Central America to hear the perspectives of LGBTQI displaced people and organizations that service those populations, because no refugee is alike. Everyone has their own personal story, and there's lots of diversity within these groups. And so we want to be able to highlight the sort of specific experiences of LGBTQI people and really the heightened risks that they face so that policies can be crafted more inclusively and with specifics tailored to different populations.
Okay, and Lucy, I only have 1 more minute left. Tell me, what's the biggest challenge for you and your organization for the next year?
Okay, so migrant people are fleeing violence, crushing poverty, natural disasters, climate change, alimentary insufficiency, threats, and hostile actions against them, and they need and deserve support and protection. And I think that the most important challenge we have now is that our children and families, that the people that are traveling in order to migrate and to seek asylum in other countries. And I think that our main problem is the criminal organizations that now are involved also in these migration processes, because it makes a lot more dangerous for migrants on the travel they have to do. And also I think that another very important challenge we have is children. We have to support especially children because, for example, we have in our northern border circuit children, which are used by the criminal organizations in order to take people to trafficking people and drugs, and they come back all the time. That's what they are called, circle children. And I think we have to support these children and the children that come with their families, and we have to make valid all the commitments that we have in the International Convention of Children, and we have to help them because they are in all the risk factors for being abused by criminal organizations, and also they are very vulnerable population. So I think that are the most important things. And we also have to face and to work, as we have already done with Agenda Migrante, with the Congress, with the public policy, with the stakeholders, in order to make new and tailor-made policies for migrants and for the situation we have now in both borders of Mexico.
Okay. Eunice, muchas felicidades por tu premio, te lo mereces. Congratulations on your award.
Muchas gracias a ti, muchas gracias a Asylum Seekers. Thank you very much. I feel really honored, and this prize is not for me, it's for all the people that work with me in this coalition of Agenda Migrante, for the migrants that are the most important, and for everybody that works in this effort.
And I think that's the point, and we'll end with this. It is important that we raise our voices for those who don't have a voice, and that's precisely what Refugees International is doing. Eunice, what a pleasure. Rachel, thank you so much for this conversation. I know that we could continue talking for hours and hours, but this is just a tiny bit of information on what you do and how you change lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos and Eunice, for being with us today. It was really an honor to join in conversation with you. Now we have a very special performance of La Música Es by Orchestra of the Americas, a group that empowers exceptional musicians to fulfill their potential as job-ready artists and impactful human beings. Please welcome Orchestra of the Americas member, Ana Aparicio.
Hello, my name is Ana Aparicio. I am a Venezuelan musician living and studying in the US. I am part of the Orchestra of the America group, which is an institution that through its initiative is helping dozens of musicians to develop the social and leadership skills needed to lead change in their communities and countries. Recently, despite the limitation of the pandemic, a group of us, musicians from across the Americas, joined forces to create the following video. Our goal in it is to show how music connects us all as human beings, across borders and divides. A continent is just a word. Color, language, and culture are not barriers. We are all human, from the Patagonia to Canada, and together, supporting each other, we can achieve anything. I hope you enjoyed it.
orquesta es un modelo de sociedad idílica, en la cual todos sus actores buscan que dicha sociedad sea hermosa, harmônica e justa.
É compartilhar diferentes culturas, diferentes experiências, todos juntos com um único objetivo.
Allows people of all backgrounds and all cultures to come together and express their love for music.
Es un lugar donde la música no tiene límites ni fronteras.
Es la unión de riquezas culturales a lo largo del continente que logran crear música a nivel excepcional.
Un gran equipo que trabaja junto para hacer música de la mejor forma posible y siempre al más alto nivel. Es dejar tu alma en cada nota que tocas para llegar al alma de la persona que te escucha.
Las Américas son el vínculo entre la sabiduría ejemplar de poderosas civilizaciones ancestrales y la juventud hecha cultura.
Las Américas son las sonrisas en medio de la dificultad.
América é a união. Estamos juntos hoje e sempre.
Las Américas para mí son mi hogar, mi lugar de origen. Creo que son inspiración de muchos aventureros en el mundo.
The Americas are a place of cultural diversity and unity.
Las Américas es alegría.
Our thanks to Ana, Aparicio, and the Orchestra of the Americas for their moving performance. And I want to thank all the people who've attended this year's virtual New York Circle event. It was my great pleasure to host the event and to focus this year on the amazing work of activists and advocates in Latin America. Many parts of the world are facing ongoing and often unprecedented displacement challenges. In Latin America, millions have fled their homes as protracted crises continue to put people in harm's way and new crises begin to emerge. 6 years into Venezuela's economic and social collapse, nearly 6 million people have been displaced. While Venezuelans are working hard to integrate into their host communities, many hurdles still exist, including recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, getting access to work and healthcare, and being accepted by their host communities. Hundreds of thousands of Central Americans have fled incomprehensible violence over the last few years, taking the perilous journey through Mexico, only to find that the door to asylum in the US is still virtually shut. Similarly, thousands of Haitians fleeing economic collapse and violence make their way throughout the region, from Chile to Mexico, in search of safety and opportunity. These challenges are why the work of our honorees, Denis, Eunice, and Juan Carlos, are so important. Denis's own life and work at Irka Casa Abierta embodies the bravery of so many LGBTQI individuals who, despite facing very real danger, continue to fight for their rights and the rights of others in their community. For displaced LGBTQI people, communities of care are essential to their protection and success in their new home. Denis and Irka Casa Abierta are an example of how refugee-led organizations are at the forefront of providing support to displaced people. Juan Carlos is another admirable refugee leader whose organization, the Coalición por Venezuela, is bringing Venezuelan voices to the halls of power to advocate for the international community to step up and help. The Coalición demonstrates the power of collective advocacy and the importance of having displaced people advocate for themselves and their needs. Eunice also ensures that migrant and refugee voices are at the center of her work, supporting asylum seekers and migrants in Mexico and at the border. Thousands of displaced people are in Mexico and in need of strong advocates who can voice their concerns to governments, the private sector, and the Mexican community at large. They have an ally and a leader in UNICEF. I love my work at RI. I love being able to advocate every day for the forcibly displaced. And mostly, I love being able to share stories of resilience, to share stories of the many people that I've met along the way who show incredible strength in some of the toughest of circumstances. Stories of people who just want what we all want, to live a life where we can provide for our children, to live in safety, and to contribute to our communities. We can work to make sure displaced people have those opportunities, and maybe by doing so, we can build a more welcoming world. Refugees International is working tirelessly to make sure the rights of refugees and displaced people are protected, but we can't continue this work alone. We need the help of every member of our community to show, we need the help of every member of our community, from every person who cares about the rights of refugees, to show solidarity with us. So you can support our advocacy by making a donation to Refugees International right now, or bidding on our silent auction online. Our silent auction features a one-of-a-kind memorabilia, 5-star vacation packages, VIP event passes, and more. So click on the link in the chat to make your bid now. Final bids will be accepted tonight until 10 p.m., so don't wait. Will you help us continue our work? If you do, we promise that we'll keep on fighting. Our heartfelt thanks to our sponsors and supporters, and to all of you for joining us. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.